like to try this thing just once. Come on, honey.
We'll show him a thing or three.
For the first time in movies, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers take center stage. They're actually fourth and fifth billing in this picture, and this is their only dance number. In the original screenplay, there's a stage direction for this scene. It reads, "They get up and dance." Ginger makes a perfect partner for Fred.
I'll never forget the first time that I went to preview and Astaire and Rogers danced together, flying down Rio. And it was after the karaoke, the solo part. And the audience cheered and applauded. I'd never heard applause in a movie theater before. And right away, I think it was in Pomona, this small town. Right away, the studio knew we've got something big.
Saw us like this, they might think that we liked each other.
Yes, they might.
It's funny how we met. And all that's happened to us since.
The way we've been sort of thrown together and everything.
As if it were all meant to happen.
It's quite an experience.
It's more than an experience. It's sort of like a romance, isn't it?
Here's where it happened. Stages 8, 9, and 10 of the old RKO lot. Of course, the numbers have been changed long since. They were known as the Astaire-Rogers stages. In over 6 years and 9 pictures, Fred and Ginger established themselves as the best-loved and best-known dancing partners in the history of movies. The incredibly successful sequence of musicals made throughout the 30s began with Flying Down to Rio. It was during rehearsals for that musical that a young choreographer presented himself to the dance director, Dave Gould, and was hired on the spot.
My first assignment, he said, well, Fred Astaire is up on stage 8, and said, would you go up there and said, see if you could do help him, any help. And of course that frightened me to death, because even then Fred was a big internationally known star. And he said, well, I'm working on a little routine, and said, would you like to see it? Said, it's a solo. Said, but it's not finished, and let me know what you think. And so he showed me this fantastic routine that wasn't finished. And he said, but right here I'm stuck for a step. I need some sort of a... And for some reason, something clicked in my mind, and I remembered a certain break. Just a very short thing. And he said, well, do it again. I said, and he said, well, that's great. So he used it. Miles, listen.
Well, I can only get the job done and I beat myself to a pulp. You know, you'll rehearse all and get to know it so well that you don't look as if you're wondering what the next step is. I never wanted to show numbers that we were doing until we had them pretty well finished and invited them to come and take a look. Because I didn't want to see us futzing around with something that we weren't sure of. And Pan and all, we all worked out, Ginger and all of us worked that way on the different partners. We used to just say, well, shall we let them have a look now? And I'd say, yeah, let's get them down here. If they don't like it, you know, and those things. And then we would get them, they'd sit there, and usually they loved what they saw because we knew what we were doing by that time.
Roberta, the third Astaire Rogers picture. One continuous take, no cuts, no post-syncing. The music and the taps are recorded live. You can even hear Ginger's laughter on the track. Fred Astaire's fame had already reached Hollywood. He and his sister Adele had been a huge success dancing on the Broadway stage and in London. The partnership broke up suddenly when Adele left to get married. Astaire made it known he was interested in doing pictures, and RKO's East Coast talent scout, Kay Brown, got her instructions from California.
This is March the 12th, 1933, Catherine Brown, to be telephoned to White Plains. That's where I lived. And it said, "Can you ship Fred Astaire by airplane today? Answer straight wire or phone. Miriam Cooper." Mr. Astaire was a great star. You didn't ask Mr. Astaire to come and do a scene. All you were trying to do was to get the personality of the star. So Mr. Astaire would sit on a stool that would go around, and I would say, "Good morning, Mr. Astaire." And he would say, "Good morning, Miss Brown. How are you? I'm fine." And we'd just go on a nonsense talk like this. And Fred Astaire, what that cameraman got in just making him turn around and giving the profile back, front, and sidewise, was absolutely charming when it came through.
And so Fred Astaire, whom David O. Selznick described as, next to Leslie Howard, the most charming man on the American stage, arrived in Hollywood.
Not bad.
But who was going to dance with the elegant Fred Astaire? RKO already had on the books a young contract player who specialized in sassy comedy roles.
Good morning, Popeye.
At first sight, maybe it wasn't the likeliest combination.
Now then, I've had several complaints about all of you.
That's funny. No one has complained to me.
Do you know what it was that clicked between them, Astaire and Rogers?
Well, I don't know how to put my finger on it except to say several things. One, he was a great dancer and a very good choreographer. She was an excellent dancer, not as good as he, but excellent. And they seemed to get along well. And there is always that famous wisecrack that Katharine Hepburn made at the time of their success. Ginger gives Fred sex, and he gives her class.
Weeks in daily rehearsal, and we didn't go into principal photography until directly after the 6 weeks were used up. And we would dance all day, every day, in a rehearsal hall, on the stage at RKO Studios. And we had a great deal of fun because something about rehearsals are really very exciting. And when you actually get to the shooting and doing the scene, the fun has kind of gone out of it to some extent. But then when you have pretty clothes to wear, well, then the fun comes back in it again. I think we all like to have pretty dresses to wear, at least the ladies, I mean.
In the pictures you did with them, you seem to have made a point of putting them within the most costly and elaborate settings you could get.
Oh, sure.
But we're talking about the early 30s now, and America wasn't in a very good state, and neither, I think, was the studio, was it?
No, it was in bad shape because it was during the Depression, and everybody was in very bad shape. The theaters had started losing money, and all the companies were going into 77B, as they called it, a form of bankruptcy. And money was very, very scarce. And we were just very fortunate that we came up with the Astaire Rogers series when we did.
Of course, Pando Berman was one of the most innovative producers I think I've ever known. He was doing top hat, white tie and tails, white sets, luxury, romance, dancing, music, and people ate it up because they wanted to get away from the breadline idea. And so he reversed the whole psychological situation of the times because it was his idea to make things glamorous in an era of drabness. Fred and I would start at least 5 weeks before the picture ever started shooting, sometimes 6 weeks. And we'd come in before Ginger would come in, and we'd work on things, and I would oftentimes be Ginger, and we would do the things together, you know. And then when Ginger came in, I would show Ginger because I knew her part, and see, of course, it's just a reverse of his part, and she was very quick. She picked up things very quick.
Did you and Fred have very much the same ideas about putting dance on film?
It was amazing how we thought alike. When I saw him dance, I said, this is what I always felt. Everything he would do, I would say, well, this is what I would do. So right away, we clicked.
In this rare piece of film, the mysterious ghost dancing with Fred is actually Hermes Pan himself. This routine was worked out for one of the Astaire movies, but it was never used. A resourceful film editor saved these few shots. They've never been seen on the cinema screen.
The first time I had ever heard of Fred Astaire, I was in the chorus, and he was a star. And I said, well, what's so great about Fred Astaire, you know? I said, well, he does broken rhythm. I said, what is broken rhythm? He said, well, it's a new kind of after-beat, on-the-beat rhythm that's very unorthodox. It's not just tap, buck and wing, time step. He does strange things in which he gets on the beat, off the beat, back and forth. we were always seeking ideas. You know, Fred hated to repeat himself in anything, so we were always trying to find some gimmick to start with, you know, just to get an idea to get. So we were walking down the street, the studio street, you know, and there was a cement mixer, you know, that goes pat 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 pat. You know, it has a one cylinder machine, motor, and it sort of had a rhythm, and so against the put put put, Fred and I would say against it, and he'd do something. We were kidding and laughing about it, and we sort of looked at each other at the same time. He said, "This will make a great number."
This brilliant routine to George Gershwin's music was captured on a home movie camera during rehearsals by Gershwin himself. It's rare to see Astaire in rehearsal, even more rare to see him in color. After every rehearsal and every take, the floor is meticulously repolished. Finally, in Gershwin's home movie footage, director Mark Sandrich is approached by a camera-shy Fred Astaire.
Did Gershwin, Cole Porter and so on, did they actually come to rehearsal? Did you ever work with them?
Oh, yes. Irving Berlin and Gershwin and, well, all the ones, they would be there for a time. They wouldn't be there for the whole shooting of the picture, but they would often be there when we went into rehearsals, because we did have rehearsal periods, and they would maybe write as they went along for some parts of the vehicle.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And they'd usually have an idea when they arrived what songs they'd already worked on, and then they'd be around, and if they had to change something, they could do it there.
Berlin came in one afternoon, and he was a terrible pianist. It was just awful. And he would play these songs. He had one bass. He would just go like that and play with the treble with the right hand. And he played Cheek to Cheek and sang it. And of course, he had an off voice, too. And just say, heaven, I'm in heaven. And when he got through, we'd sort of look at each other and say, oh, yes, very good, you know, is it? But it said, it must be, he wrote it. And then when Hal Bowen, for instance, came in and played it, it was another thing, just absolutely exquisite, you know.
Heaven, and there's a big space there. I'm in heaven, again a space. And the cares that hang around me through the week seem to vanish like a gambler's lucky streak. Quote, when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Triple rhyme schemes like I have never heard a poet write. I mean, that's hard to do, and this man had no formal education. He never went beyond the 5th or 6th grade. He was a waiter in one of these joints in New York City. I mean, this is a man who was blessed with a natural talent. And his lyric writing, to me, is still fantastic.
He was always writing. I mean, it was funny because I used to play gin rummy with him away from the studio quite often. And he'd be playing, and he'd sing, and I'd say, what's that? Is that in the next picture? He said, no, it is. It's gin, you know. You're using it to get me. If you're going to make up some songs, will you do it elsewhere? Not, you know, things like that. He's a wonderful man.
Irving Berlin was a very nice gentleman. He was very, very tough trader. Hard as nails. Money, negotiations were very difficult with him. In fact, I had to end up giving him 10% of the profits.
May I go on another tune of his? Also in the picture. Isn't This a Lovely Day to Be Caught in the Rain? How about that for a title? Isn't this a lovely day, underneath it, to be caught in the rain? And the verse went, which I'll never forget, because the verse was so, it struck me as being such genius. The weather is frightening, the thunder and lightning seem to be having their way, but as long as I'm with you, it's a lovely day.
The turn in the weather will keep us together, so I can honestly say that as far as I'm concerned, it's a lovely day, and everything's okay. Isn't this a lovely day to be caught in the rain? You were going on your way, now you've got to remain. Just as you were going, leaving me all at sea. The clouds broke, they broke, and oh, what a break for me. I can see the sun up high, though we're caught in a storm. I can see where you and I could be caught.
He had a nice voice. He had a very pleasant voice. And I set all the keys in the right direction so that when we went over it with the keys that I put it in, I would have it so that it was comfortable. And you didn't have to go stretching for, you know, because a song like Isn't This a Lovely Day to Be Caught in the Rain, it goes up to, let the rain pitter-patter, for it really doesn't matter, one of those kind of things, and you'd have to go up to the top of his scale.
But it really doesn't matter if the skies are gray. Long as I can be with you, it's a lovely day.
To go from reality to fantasy is a difficult thing. Dialogue is reality. Dance is fantasy and song. So you have to slide into it before the people are conscious that you're doing it. The dance is also arranged the same way so that they doesn't start right off with a bang. They would maybe start to walk around or something and do a little step, and then Ginger would copy him, and then he'd do something, and then they do it together, and then before you know it, it was like a fun, natural occurrence.
A man who had the job of putting many of these exquisite routines onto film was the director Mark Sandridge. Trained as a physicist, he was a meticulous technician who took the construction of his movies very seriously. This is a complete diagrammatic breakdown of one of the Astaire Rogers films. In this case, Follow the Fleet. And here we can see the mind of the scientist at work. Each of these colors denotes an activity in the film. Red, dancing, green, singing, blue, music, and their lengths denote the amount of time dedicated to each of those activities at that particular point. The white sequences, the white bars, stand for drama and dialogue. Though less colorful, still an essential ingredient of the film.
I became what was called the resident Astaire Rogers writer. The thing uppermost in my mind always was sentiment and absurdity. In other words, combine the two with a sort of rippling kind of dialogue without too many obvious jokes.
By any chance, are you Mr. Tonetti?
Io sono arrivato, io sono pronto, Rodolfo Tunetti.
So that even if people miss a laugh line, the next audience would get it.
Mr. Fitzgerald? Oh, I am delightful.
Oh, I shouldn't doubt it, old man. I shouldn't doubt it. But don't you think that a correspondent ought to come to work quietly? Let's have more repose and less Rigoletto.
I'm ready.
We kept the dialogue going, going, going. And it was the first time, at least so far as we knew, the American public had seen what the critics, the benign critics at the time, were pleased to call high comedy.
Yes, sometimes the lady and I have the conversation. Sometimes I play the concertina. Sometimes I play the solitaire. But mostly I practice my singing. At home, my wife, he do not like me to sing.
Unquestionably a woman of great perspicacity.
Oh, si, signore, you bet.
You're absolutely sure, Mr. Donetti, that my client will be safe?
Oh, signore, with me, strictly business. My slogan?
Your wife is safe with Tonetti. He prefers spaghetti.
Your wife is safe with Tonetti. He prefers spaghetti.
To Eric Rhodes belongs the unusual distinction of having his performances proscribed and indeed banned by Mussolini himself.
Yes, apparently I was a travesty, and I did not represent true Italian manhood.
Ah! Salute!
Why, yes, of course.
I loved my parts, and I believed in them. And as absurd as they might seem, I tried to do them with as honest an approach as possible.
You became a part of a kind of repertory company with,
yes.
with the others.
May I say family?
Madge, explain to this maniac that he's making a very serious mistake.
It was fun to go to the set every day. Helen Broderick was a lamb.
Go right ahead, Alberto.
No, I cannot kill him before a lady.
Well, if you're going to pull out on us, Alberto, maybe it's best that you don't kill him.
Edward Horton was so funny in person as well as professionally.
I did not want to kill you. You must forgive me.
I forgive you.
Oh!
Go right ahead, boys. Don't mind me.
As you know, in any dancing picture, the silhouette of the dancers is the most important, and they must stand out. So we made a big effort that the clothes would be seen against the set and not interfere with the people. And in a white set, that's great, because anything looks good in a white room, you know. That was the time of Art Deco, you know, which started in 1927 with the exhibition in Paris. And it came over to this country the following year at Lord and Taylor windows. Were packed solid with people. And then the next year, everybody had beds 2 inches off the ground and silver wallpaper and all that jazz. And so that's what we were extending, the Art Deco period. But of course, it got way far afield, as you can see. The original French Art Deco was very beautiful, but what was done to it was less than beautiful.
Who were the designers involved? Who was responsible for the look?
Well, as you see on the screen, you always see Cedric Gibbons or Van Ness Glaze. Then they had the person who worked for them, the unit art director, who got the credit. Nobody else got screen credit. But mind you, this is a grave injustice, because actually the designing was done by Charles Oman and Alan Abbott at RKO, period.
That's the one that we had so much trouble with her dress. The dress was beautiful, but it was all very fine ostrich feathers, and it moved beautifully. Fred would throw her up in the air, and then she'd fall on the back again, Ginger. And then through the step, feathers would sort of drift up and fall in the face or fall in front of the camera and say, well, all right, take it again. And Fred was about to lose his mind. He said, this damn dress.
I had to be a little bit interested in what the women had, if I could get a hold of it. And sometimes you get a hold of the back of it or something, and I didn't want something that didn't work right. There were feathers in one thing that used to fall off a lot. That caused a lot of trouble.
He found that the feathers were getting all over his tuxedo, and you couldn't see them. I mean, I dare you to see it if you run the film. What you can see is the feathers coming off as I dance. You see them float, but you don't see them on his clothes. But he saw them on his clothes, and he was furious. He didn't want his tuxedo. And I guess I couldn't blame him, but I had designed the dress, and I was going to wear it, and I did.
Why the studio always put me on musicals, I'll never know. I still don't know a word of music. Couldn't carry a tune if I had to. But knowing the tunes and knowing the words and knowing how they were going through it, it made it easy for me because I knew where they were going to go, what they were going to do, and nothing was difficult.
But how did you know if you didn't hear the music?
I had watched them rehearsing it. And then once they got on the stage to photograph it, we usually rehearsed it for 8 or 10 or 12 times. By that time, even the fellas pulling the dolly and the people around knew exactly what we were going to do. And if it was a very difficult number, like it was most of the time, Pan was there. And Pan would touch the man pulling the dolly. He said, get ready to go back, get ready to go back. He said, as soon as he jumps in the air, get ready and pull back. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. So Pan was there to help us.
There were certain steps that were definitely meant to be shot from a certain angle. Like, suppose you're doing a traveling step that's coming fast. Now, if you took it straight on and the camera's here and it's coming at you, you don't see any speed. You just see a figure getting bigger and bigger. But if you get it on the side, you see tremendous speed going across screen. So certain steps are designed for a certain angle, or else some of them are almost meaningless.
Sandwich had this cameraman, Dave Abel, that started on the second Astaire Roger picture, and I was fortunate enough to be the operator with David, and my assistant, Willard Barth, worked with me. And the same way with the chief electrician, he worked with us, and his best boy, and most of the crew. In the same way with the grip, the fellow that pulled the dolly and his assistants and all the men he had with him. So we worked as a team at all times. So when Mark got ready to do a picture, he said, we're going to go such and such a date. Everybody in the studio knew that. Every department knew that. When he got ready to go, he had his crew. I was the camera operator. Our job was just to keep them, like a regular camera operator, is to keep the people in the picture. Get a proper headroom, and the trouble with the Astaire Roger was getting their feet in. You had to get their feet in, and the camera had to move forward and back. That's all they could do, was go forward and back. They couldn't go sideways like they do now. They were lit so as I could pan the camera anywhere they went. It was rehearsed many times so we knew how far they could go. And we always lit just a little bit farther than that in case something happened, in case Fred took a slide more or Ginger took a slide more one way or the other, that the lighting would be protected.
Follow the Fleet was the first picture I did sets on. When I designed the set, I thought I would like to incorporate the lights in the set so that they wouldn't be able to radically change it. Abel was the cameraman, and Abel was criticized a little by overlighting the sets at that time. And we thought we would paint the shadows on the ground as they came out the window. We did that, and he was obliged to light the set in a lower key for the first time.
It was really quite a difficult dress to handle. It was so heavy. It must have been 35 pounds. And the sleeves were bell-shaped, and they were heavily beaded at the end, and they was heavily beaded at the bottom. The whole dress was beads. So as I'd whirl, I'd come around, and I didn't realize it, but it would slap him in the face.
We were doing, there was a turn, bodies were going like this, and then she went like that, and this thing,
It was a very heavy...
Yeah, beads. It was full of beads and spangles and every other thing. Anyway, I think I said, what the hell was that? Or something.
He paid poor baby. I didn't know that that was happening. And when we'd stop, he said, can't we do something about those sleeves? Well, it was too late. We'd already initiated the dress to the film.
Were they ever happy with the first take?
Oh, very, very seldom. Fred Astaire was such a perfectionist, and if a thing didn't feel right, they did it over. He never felt it was perfect. If you talk to him, you know that he never felt that he did what he could have done.
I worried about things 10 years after I did them, I'd look at them on the screen and I'd see that and I'd say, oh, why did we do that? You know, and maybe it wouldn't even be noticed by anybody else.
So oftentimes Fred would get home, he'd call me and say, well, do you think that one step is quite right? Because it doesn't seem to... He said, I really hate it. I said, well, if you hate it, so we'll change it tomorrow.
Was he a bit of a worrier?
Oh. His sister, Adele, used to call him Moaning Minnie. He's famous for worrying and fretting. He wouldn't even go to see the rushes. He'd send me in to see the rushes. He said, I can't stand to look at myself. I said, oh, you look great. He said, I can't stand the way I look. And then he'd say, how was it? I said, oh, it was great. He said, I don't like the way you say great. He said, there's something about the way you say great that you might have detected as little something that didn't look quite right.
If I'm working with a girl, I want to see how she looks, and so I'd keep my eye on her to see if she was looking good and all that kind of thing. And then I'd look at myself and oh, what did I do? And it didn't do anything. It's just you can't get the same viewpoint that somebody else says, what's the matter? What are you kicking about? I said, nothing. I thought I saw something, you know. Then sometimes I'd be right, too, because it wasn't what I wanted, and I always regretted it.
Those numbers were long. We took something in the neighborhood of 80-odd takes, but I don't remember the exact number. If you know, we started from the bottom of the stairs and danced up. But it was either the sun arcs went out, or the camera didn't work, or there was sound in the camera, one thing or another, or we missed something. And then we got to the top of the stairs, we cut, and then we had to move the camera upstairs. It went on and on and on.
They were getting very, very tired. Finally, we got one. Made exit right in front of the camera for a change, and as they did, Freddie's hairpiece flew up, and he looked like a rather surprised Indian. So we had to do it again. And it was then that I noticed Ginger changing shoes. I thought they were pink slippers, but they were slippers filled with blood.
She could hardly really walk. It was, Fred was dripping. He would change his shirt 5 or 6 times. And every time we would get almost to the finish, something would happen. And it got to be like a block. And sometimes you say, well, what's going to happen now? And it would. And we were just at our wits' end. And finally, the director, George Stevens, said, let's quit for the night, said it's late, everybody's tired. And Fred and Ginger said, no, let's do it while we are hot, and said, we'll do it if we have to kill ourselves. And so we said, all right, one more time. So they got up the top of the stairs, everybody was holding their breath, you know. And he caught her the first time, then spins. He caught her the second time, I think it's about 4 times. The last time he caught her, she whirled off down the steps, and it was perfect. And everybody shouted. The crew said, hooray! You look at it today and said, oh, isn't that pretty, you know? They just having so much fun.
I went through a lot of hell getting them to make picture after picture for various reasons. Fred did not want to work with Ginger in her first picture because she wasn't an English girl in gay divorce. I persuaded him that the American audience didn't give a damn. They liked her. He didn't want to work with her in his second picture because he certainly didn't want to carry the team to another one, and that thing just went on and on and on.
I don't think anybody wants to get teamed up. You know, I was teamed up with my sister for years. I always used to say, what am I going to do when she decided not to, and she decided not to, so I went off alone, and when I get teamed up with Ginger Rogers.
And I solved it really by getting the company to give him a new contract, which gave him 10% of the profits. And after he got that first few checks from the profits, his reluctance to work with her evaporated.
That feeling built up into a rumor at one stage that you didn't actually get on with her.
Oh, Pando Berman will say that we fought, but we didn't. He'll say that we had a quarrel. We never did. We argued about something, which you do with anybody you're working routine dances with or doing anything with anyone. You've got to argue or point out or something. But we never had any cross arguments tonight. And she would say the same thing.
It's funny because the studio, I guess, wanting to cook up some things about us for the newspapers, would cook up these terrible things, and we'd read about them. And we'd look at them in the paper and say, what was that from? Who did that? And we'd find it was up in the publicity department that had started all of this about our fighting. It was terrible. We've done nothing but try to live it down ever since.
Things have come to a pretty pass. Our romance is growing flat. 'Cause you like this and the other, while I go for this and that. Goodness knows what the end will be. Oh, I don't know where I'm at. It's plain to see we two will never make one. Something must be done. You say either, and I say either. You say neither, and I say neither. Either, either, neither, neither. Let's call the whole thing off.
Was Ginger similarly reluctant to be in a team?
Not nearly as much so, very slightly, because she was making pictures all the time on her own, which compensated. She went into a small picture that didn't take too long while Astaire was choreographing and rehearsing with Hermes Pan.
Here in the written archives, we found a succession of contracts negotiated between Ginger and the company. The steadily increasing salary figures reflect Ginger's growing pull with cinema audiences. But her contribution to the Astaire-Rogers partnership was never considered to merit a percentage, as in the case of Fred. Incidentally, here are some notes on the studio's insurance policies on the two stars. Fred was insured at $1 million, Ginger at $500,000.
As I remembered, I think the contract ran into a certain length of time, and then we decided that I think we were going to do something apart. Ginger and I were going to do something apart from each other.
Well, tomorrow we'll be all straightened out. You'll be on your way, and I'll be on my way.
Where?
Well, I've got to get back to being a bachelor again. Sort of catch up with my usual gay life. Forget all this.
I hope you enjoy your gaiety.
Thanks. I hope you'll enjoy your divorce.
We had to give Fred Astaire one picture without Ginger Rogers as his partner. That was a deal I made to get him to do a previous picture. And it just turned out that it happens to be Joan Fontaine because she was under contract to our studio.
I suppose it seems very odd to you, Mike, coming here like this.
Not at all. Neighborly. Won't you have a seat?
No, thank you. I can only stay a moment.
I'd feel safer if you were sitting.
I just wanted to speak to you.
The mix of personalities was certainly not as good because there wasn't that energy and that pep that Ginger had and that comedy. Joan was a quiet girl.
Look, I suddenly realized that I didn't really love Jeffrey. All that had just been a schoolgirl crush. And the reason that was so clear to me was because I suddenly realized that I love somebody else.
But it also turned out to be a bad idea because she couldn't dance. And as a result, the picture had no dancing in it to amount to a hill of beans, except what Fred Astaire did by himself. And it was the least successful of all the Astaire pictures.
When you have a dancing partner, there's always going to be a time that the girl is going to cry. Ginger didn't do that. But most every other girl that I worked with cried because they said they couldn't, oh, I can't do it or something. I, oh, you can, shut up, get on, do it. And they do it or something. If they don't like it, I would never ask them to do it.
Fred is quite a perfectionist, you know. Fred Astaire is one of the most demanding of people, but he was not my Svengali, and a lot of people think he was, but he was not. I was my own woman.
Now you're feeling sleepy. Very sleepy.
Yes, tell me.
Your eyes are growing heavy, Amanda. Close them. Close them.
I love him. I just adore him. And he knows I do, too.
You're in a trance now. I will bring you out of it shortly. You will act and be perfectly normal in every respect.
I just adore that man, and I always have, and we've always had the nicest camaraderie between us.
Are you sure that gun's empty?
Yes, yes.
Oh, it is.
We never had any kissing scenes either. I didn't. Mushy scenes bothered me, and I used to hate kissing scenes, so we decided to do no kissing scenes with Ginger until later on in the series. And I finally did a kissing thing, and held her like that, and they put it on slow motion when they showed us the rushes of it. I went to see the rushes, and we stayed that way for 5 minutes, I think. I said, hey, don't overdo it. They didn't intend to, but because there's such a thing about it. Oh, they never kiss each other, they never kiss each other. I said, really, all right, they didn't kiss each other. All right, so they did kiss each other.
Oh, Vernon.
They were full of affection for each other in their last RKO picture together, the story of Vernon and Irene Castle, when they played a married couple for the first time. The Castles were a real-life dancing partnership from the time of the First World War. Astaire sought to recreate scrupulously the dancing style of that period. But this effort to alter the formula wasn't welcomed, or maybe it just came too late. The team seemed to have run out of ideas for Astaire Rogers vehicles. Or perhaps the chemistry that had been so potent in 1933 had lost its attraction in the more knowing climate of the late 30s. For whatever reason, audience responses to the Astaire-Rogers pairing began to cool. The film lost $50,000.
The team had it. I don't think they could have gone more. And after the Vernon and Irene Castle, which was their last one together, Fred left the studio, went to MGM, or no, freelance for a while. And I continued to work with him. Ginger also did many things after that, I'm not wrong.
We were a team. You know, he was not alone, and I was not alone. We were together. It's interesting that people refer to the Fred Astaire of pictures. But you see, I was in them too. And so I take umbrage at that, because you don't say Alfred Lunt. You say Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontaine. At least I think you do.
Well, I have certainly never said the Fred Astaire pictures, I have to say. In fact, usually it's the other way around. It's the Ginger and Fred pictures.
Well, that's
in my
interesting,
book.
because it always has been said to me that in the way I've just described. And I felt that I was a part of a team, and I loved being a part of a team. I wanted to do things on my own. Who doesn't? But when I was there, I loved doing what I was doing, and I hope I showed that I did. I felt that I did. I did everything to express that I was joyful about what I was doing. And I loved working with Fred. He's wonderful to work with.
many of these pictures are now part of the cultural history of the century, really. I mean, people, it's not going too far to say that people are now looking on them as works of art in their own right. Did you have any conception of that when you were doing them?
No. No, we were just doing it, trying to make a buck. They can, if you keep them long enough, they probably become treasures of all times. They don't lose them. There must be an awful lot of film lost somewhere, though. Not these particularly. But it's kind of a shame.
I think they will keep them for quite a long time, actually.
It's okay with me.
In the next Tales from Hollywood, we look at the other side of life on the RKO lot. Ginger Rogers works her way to preeminence as Queen of the Studio and an Oscar.
I'm going to have this baby.
Oh, my dear, have you thought what that really means?
Sure. I know.
The career of the unpredictable Katharine Hepburn takes a downturn.
Oh, never hang on to a leopard's tail, Susan.
Sing, David. I can't give you anything but love.
These two ladies, together with a one-time bit part player called Lucille Ball, talk frankly about a woman's lot in our next episode of The RKO Story.
Oh, baby, dream a while, scheme a while. Happiness, and I guess all those things you always find for. Hey, it's nice to see you looking swell, baby. Diamond bracelets Woolworths never sell, baby. Till that lucky day, you know darn well. Oh, baby.
Baby. Oh, David, where is Zoe?
I'll be back.
Oh, dear. I can't give you anything but love. Not you, it.